Good morning, BookTube. I thought as we were almost halfway through the month, I'd review what I've read so far, where I am in terms of the TBR that I announced at the beginning of November, and the changes that I've made to that TBR in traditional Tony style. My name's Tony. I am the host of Lockster Reads. So far, I have finished the first book on the TBR, Disputed Earth. My full review of that is up on the channel. Feel free to watch that. And I have started. Well, I've started several things, but let's go with the TBR first. I have started Edmund Blunden, a biography by Barry Webb. I have just read the end of the first chapter, Ancestors, which is interesting. I like Barry Webb's writing style. It does seem like he knew Edmund Blunden, so I'm interested to see how that affects things. What this did make me realise is that I read Edmund Blunden's memoir, Her Soldiers We. No, is that the right one? Why have I suddenly had a mental block? Anyway, I've read Edmund Blunden's memoir, but it's been a long time. So I thought what I'll do is I will reread that in parallel to this. And what that then made me do is realise that a lot of the memoirs that I wanted to talk about, memoirs and fiction, and I'm just going to talk about in a moment about fictional memoirs, roman à clefs, etc. But yeah, so this is interesting so far. I look forward to getting further into it. Edmund Blunden had a long and interesting life, I think World War One is an important part of that, understandably. So that's what I'm on. So then what happened then was obviously that changed. Oh, actually, this is on thing to TBR. I am 96 pages into Up the Line to Death, which is a poetry collection. This is organised, well, sort of by time and sort of by theme. It starts with a section called Happy is England Now, with some of the early poems that were written at the time, which are a bit more, oh, England, come on, boys, let's get out there and show what we're capable of. And it ends with At Last, which is the section, and the section before that is called Oh Jesus, Make It Stop. So you could see the way it works. The thing I found most interesting about this is it has a section called To Unknown Lands, which includes poetry from poets writing about things going on not at the Western Front, and also in the air and on the sea. Very limited on the sea, but on the sea. And also Home Front, which is poems about, well, it's got Bombed in London, Air Raid, the Zeppelin, the war films, the Miner's Response, which is a bit of a snarky one, the Verdicts, Minesweeping Trawlers, 1915, and In the Time of Breaking of Nations by Thomas Hardy. There's a couple of Kipling poems in there, and another poem by Lawrence Binyon, which is the Zeppelin. So far I am about halfway through the section called Death's Kingdom, which includes the poem The General by Siegfried Sassoon, which I'm going to read because it seems ostensibly quite light-hearted, but actually is an incredibly angry poem. The General by Siegfried Sassoon. Good morning, the General said, when we met him last week on our way to the line. Now the soldiers he smiled at are most of them dead, and we're cursing his staff for incompetent swine. He's a cheery old card, grunted Harry to Jack, as they slogged up to Arras with rifle and pack. But he did for them both with his plan of attack. Don't get on the wrong side of Siegfried Sassoon. And I am at the end of chapter 2 of In Parenthesis. I'm a bit behind on this one, but I've been distracted by other things. What I'm going to do here is also I'm going to read a bit at the end of chapter 2. The sergeant has just started talking to John Bull. This is just I want to read this. Anyway, I think it's one of my favourite passages from the whole thing. It's quite long, so forgive me. On addressing commissioned officers, it was his favourite theme. John Ball stood patiently, waiting for the eloquence to spend itself. The tedious flow continued, then broke off very suddenly. He looked straight at Sergeant Snell inquiringly, whose eyes changed queerly, who ducked in under the low entry. John Ball would have followed, but stood fixed and alone in the little yard, his senses highly alert, his body incapable of movement or response. The exact disposition of small things, the precise shapes of trees, the tilt of a bucket, the movement of a straw, the disappearing right boot of Sergeant Snell, all minute noises, separate and distinct, in a stillness charged through with some approaching violence, registered not by the ear, nor any single faculty, an onrushing perversion, saturating all existence with exactitude, logarithmic, dial-timed, millesimal, of calculated velocity, some mean chemist's contrivance, a stinking physicist's destroying toy. He stood alone on the stones, his mess tin spilled at his feet. Out of the vortex, rifling the air it came, bright, brass-shod, Pandoran, with all filling screaming, the howling crescendo up-piling snapped. The universal world, breath held 1/2 second, a bludgeoned stillness. Then the pent-up violence released, a consummation of all burstings out, all sudden uprendings and reavings through, all taking out of vents, all barrier breaking, all unmaking, penetric begatting, the dissolving and splitting of solid things, in which unearthing aftermath John Ball picked up his mess tin and hurried within, ashen, huddled, waited in the dismal straw. Behind E Battery, 50 yards down the road, a great many mangolds, uprooted, pulped, congealed with chemical earth, spattered and made slippery with the rigid boards leading to the emplacement. The sap of vegetables slobbered the spotless breech block of number 3 gun. Now, I read that very badly because there's some. What I should have done is checked all the words, but I just wanted to read that because that's one of my favourite passages. And it gives you an example of what the book as a whole is like. I suspect if you don't like that section, then you're probably not going to like much of the rest of the poem. But I'm on part 3, Starlight Order, which starts with a quote from the Gododin. Men went to Catrath, familiar with laughter, the old, the young, the strong, the weak. So that's where I am with those two. Now, what happened then was I thought, actually, the Blunden thing sort of nudged me along. I really need to reread a lot of things that I read some time ago. I've been keeping a list of everything I've read since 2016, and a lot of most of these books aren't on it, which means I read them a long time ago. I probably read them in 2014 because there was a plan then to start a sort of 100th anniversary World War One reading thing with my friend. Which, for reasons of life, never happened. So what I decided to do was the first thing I decided to do was go to a pair of books that are fiction. They're novels, but they are I think what literary people call romana clef. So they're basically biography disguised as fiction, thinly in one, more thinly in one case than in the other, but pretty obviously thing. So they are Bid Me to Live by HD. HD is the sort of nom de plume. Is that the right? Oh God, my brain. Of Hilda Doolittle, who was an American poet and writer. That's obviously her there. It's about her. Well, it's a fascinating book actually because it's not only does it feature. I mean, the cover. World War One is a key part of this book, and because it's about her life in London and elsewhere during World War One after she marries this man who in real life is Richard Aldington, a poet and writer. So it is about that, but it's also about how her trying to find her own creative voice. I love this book. It doesn't get enough love, in my opinion. And Richard Aldington's book, which is the other book I'm reading alongside this, is Death of a Hero, which is a Penguin classic. And my contention is, if Death of a Hero is a Penguin classic, this should be a Penguin classic. I suspect if it, I suspect if it hadn't been written by a woman and wasn't quite so free-form and modernist, if that's the right word, this would definitely be a Penguin classic. But a lot of the World War One memoirs, Robert Graves, Richard Aldington, Edmund Blunden, they're all Penguin classics. This should be a Penguin classic, in my opinion. It has a very long intro. I've read the very long introduction, which is actually incredibly useful in terms of contextualising it, and it's got some great pictures in it of the author herself, Aldington before the war, Aldington during the war, and other people who feature in this book. There are a number of famous people who are portrayed in this book in disguise, including D.H. Lawrence, his wife Frida, Ezra Pound, Bridget Patmore, Cecil Gray, etc. And it's useful to have, that's HD in 1956. And then the book starts, so you can see what a chunky introduction it is. It also starts with a brilliant poem by Robert Herrick called "To Anthea, Who May Command Him Anything." I'm going to finish this video. This is what this and Richard Aldington's Death of a Hero I'm reading in parallel, because I'm going to want to do a video on the two books, and they were both Imagist poets. Now, the great KD at KD Books did a video recently about a Brazilian book he'd read, and he said, "Look, I know nothing about this, and I just want to admit that I know nothing about this," and he wished more people would do so. I know nothing about Imagist poetry, but I do have a Imagist poetry Penguin collection, which has, interesting in its introduction, starts off by saying basically Imagist poetry isn't, not much in Imagist poetry is any good, so what's the point of this book? Which I think is quite ironic. So I want to read some Imagist poetry as well. That'll be a parallel thing. I might not talk about that in the videos. I'm going to end this video though with "To Anthea, Who May Command Him Anything" by Robert Herrick, because I thought when I read it, it was fantastic. And also it's where she gets the title of the book from. "Bid me to live, and I will live, thy Protestant to be, or bid me love, and I will give a loving heart to thee. A heart as soft, a heart as kind, a heart as sound and free, as in the whole world thou canst find, that heart I'll give to thee. Bid that heart stay, and it will stay, to honour thy decree, or bid it languish quite away, and it shall do so for thee. Bid me to weep, and I will weep, while I have eyes to see, and having none, yet I will keep a heart to weep for thee. Bid me despair, and I'll despair, under that cypress tree, or bid me die, and I will dare, even death, to die for thee. Thou art my life, my love, my heart, the very eyes of me, and hast command of every part, to live and die for thee." So that's where I am at the moment in my TBR, which I've kind of nudged into different direction. I hope that's been interesting. I will do another video tomorrow. I don't know what the subject of that will be. I'd like to do one for most days in November, just to get practiced at it, because as you can see, I'm still a bit kind of making it up as I go along. I don't know whether I want to script things. I need notes, I think, because my brain doesn't work, my memory isn't good enough to just pull stuff out of the air, but I prefer the sort of vague spontaneity of discussing things off the cuff, even though it involves a lot of ums and ahs. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's where we are. Have a good day, and I will speak to you anon. Bye, BookTube.